You're watching Behind the Headlines. I'm Pacchia. Last week, Senator Elizabeth Warren and 3 other senators made waves by announcing an ambitious piece of legislation called the 21st Century Glass-Steagall Act. In essence, the bill hopes to insulate consumer bank deposits from banks' risky investment activities. The bill, of course, takes its name from the original Glass-Steagall Act, which stood as law of the land from 1933 to 1999. Joining me now to go over the bill and what it could mean for today's financial system, I'm joined by Bob Rice, managing partner at Tangent Capital Partners. Welcome back. Good to see you.
Thank you.
So the bill is being applauded by many clamoring for financial regulatory reform, but also on the other hand, you have a pervasive sense out there that there's no real chance for this bill to pass. How do you see it?
I think the bank lobby is simply too strong to allow something like this to happen at this point. After all, we're having trouble even getting the basic Volcker rule from Dodd-Frank implemented. So this goes much, much farther than that would.
Hard to pass laws in today's system, but you've worked in law and finance for a long time. Do you think we'll ever see the old separation of commercial and investment banking activities reinstated in the financial system?
You know, look, at some level, I wish that we would. I wish that we could. I would like the idea to be that depository, as Senator Warren says, that banking is boring, that we get back to the days when these depository institutions that we as taxpayers are guaranteeing are utterly separate from other kinds of activities. I don't think that that's a realistic view, however, anymore, both because of the commercial realities of the world and the power of the various lobbies.
In this debate, I see 2 important questions getting conflated to some extent. One is whether Glass-Steagall would have prevented the financial crisis, and the other is whether reinstating something like Glass-Steagall would make the financial system safer going forward. Would the passing of this bill hypothetically do either of those?
I think it would make it safer going forward, for sure. Whether or not it, quote, would have prevented the crisis, people like to point out the fact, well, Lehman wouldn't, the Lehman moment would have still been a Lehman moment, and that wouldn't have been affected by Glass-Steagall. But of course, that ignores the idea that the reason that the contagion effect was so scary was there's been such a huge consolidation of these financial institutions, which was indeed largely driven by the repeal of Glass-Steagall. So it was a contributing factor the last time around. If we were to get rid of it, it would certainly make things safer and calmer, but there are other ways to do it as well, and I don't think this particular way is very realistic at the moment.
This all goes to the question of control. This bill is in part an attempt at preventing banks from holding the American taxpayer hostage and ransoming a bailout from the federal government whenever they need it. I mean, when people talk about socialized losses and privatized gains, this is where this concept seems to start. My question to you is, does Dodd-Frank, the Volcker Rule, capital requirements, does that come close to ending that?
I think the combination of these things certainly will make things safer. The new capital requirements, one of the things I really do like that we're seeing right now is the Fed and the SEC are proposing these so-called simple leverage rules on the banks, on the largest banks, instead of these risk-adjusted capital requirements. And the risk-adjusted capital requirements are very, very subject to manipulation. The BIS actually looked at one portfolio, applied different banks' VAR models to it, and came up with required capital ratios of somewhere between 5 and 15% on exactly the same portfolio. So going to a simpler ratio and a higher ratio, now proposing 6% by the Fed and the SEC, and the Brown-Vitter bill would propose a 15% capital ratio requirement on this simple ratio, which takes just liabilities and Tier 1 capital into account and doesn't try to weight all of the various categories of potential risks. That's the kind of relatively straightforward measure that I think has a chance to be implemented and actually does have a chance to work. There will be a lot of incentive to start to scale down the size of the institutions as those ratios go up.
Yeah, it seems like you're saying that this is less about structure and more about size. Is it your sense that in the political sphere in Washington, D.C. and on Wall Street, there's an understanding of that realization? Do you see people coming around to that?
I think people are coming around to that. I think that's where you're seeing these various institutions, Congress and the regulators on this issue. What everybody's looking at is the same pie chart. The percentage of assets controlled by the 5 biggest banks in this country has gone up and up and up ever since the Glass-Steagall bill was repealed in '99 And ever since the last financial crisis in 2008, they've only gotten bigger and bigger. So if they were too big to fail now, I mean, they're too bigger to fail.
Right.
And so we do, in fact, have to do something. It has nothing to do with whether or not we want to, whether we have the political will to not bail these banks out. The markets will demand it. If institutions of this size start going under, we will be forced into recapping them.
Fascinating stuff. Bob, thanks so much for talking about it.
Thank you.
Good to see you. That's Bob Rice, Managing Partner at Tangent Capital Partners. If you'd like to learn more about the issues we just discussed, be sure to go check out our offerings on BloombergLaw.com and also on the Bloomberg Terminal. You can see more of our videos on YouTube, and you can follow our updates, of course, on Twitter. I'm Lee Pacchia. Thanks for watching.